Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at the ground vehicles that are going to be coming in Update La Royale. We're going to be on the dev server having a look at them, but remember, since this is the first video that you'll be seeing on the channel when it comes to the new vehicles and also all the new stuff, it's a dev server. Things can change, usually they do, so just to understand that when looking at the stats, the BRs and the general statistics which are around the place. So let's get into it, starting off with America. You have the M4T26. Now, this is an interesting conglomeration, I suppose you'd class it as. It is a M4 Sherman chassis with access to the T26 turret, which is very similar to the M26 turret. So you take a very chunky turret and just stick it on a standard Sherman hull. It kind of shows you how big the turret kind of is compared to the hull. You may not be able to tell when it comes to like looking at stuff like the T26E5 or the T25 itself, but it's a big step up compared to the Sherman turret. And then even stuff like the M6A2E1 with its big old turret on it as well, just showing how massive these things are. So the M4T26 will have the mobility of a Sherman, but the firepower of a Pershing, meaning that it has this 90mm M3 cannon, it has this M82 shot, should be really nice to use, and generally pretty nice. On top of it, you also have the 50 cal, which will work it wonders as well. Also helps out the BR for America. America has always had this weird relationship with 6.0 and 6.3, where 5.7 and 6.7 are super strong, and it seems like they're trying to pad out that area to make it a little bit better. Then we have next, of course, the M1 KVT. Now, the M1 KVT is a premium vehicle that is coming to the game. It's a copy of the standard M1 with some additional features on it. This basically is kind of an Op4 model, I suppose is what you class it as. If you don't like the additions to it, the Viz mod as it's known, you can actually take it off. And then it's just a standard M1 Abrams tank with the 105mm M68A1 cannon. But if you actually want to, you know, have a bit of drip, I suppose, you can use the additions. Now it is just a Viz mod. This means that these areas here that you see, like the bricks and all of this, don't actually count as anything. So they don't even count as additional steel or additional, homogeneous armor for defense. They are not ERA blocks. They are nothing. So just to like let you know into that before you go into it. This has exactly the same armor structure as the standard M1 Abrams. The only difference is these on the back, the good old gas tanks, which also are kind of annoying because they get in the way of your gun. So that is a bit of a problem, which is why I'm sure many people will probably just go for the standard M1 Abrams. Everything else is exactly the same on it compared to, you know, the one in the tech tree. It's a 10.3, it has the M774 round, it has Gen 1 gunner thermals, laser rangefinder, good survivability, and great mobility as well. So this being like kind of the primo premium for the American ground tech tree, you can pre-order it right now before the update comes out, and get it as the update comes out as well. For Germany, you have a few vehicles which are coming for ground. The first one is the Panzer 38T NA. This is in an interesting place in the tech tree, actually. So it actually sits between the SDKFC 2519 and also the SDKFC 2342, or the Puma as it's known. I thought it would be in a different place because, of course, you have the Panzer 38T A and also F here, but it turns out they've decided to stick it in the left-hand tree because it's labeled as a light tank, and also that means at rank 2 it gets itself scouting, which is pretty nice. So you'll be able to use this in multiple different ways. It gets access to the 37mm KWK-38T. This has the APC rounds and also a little bit of additional penetration on the one that you unlock. Actually, you get less penetration on it, at least it looks like, but only a little. But the thing that changes is, well, I don't even know what changes on it. It looks basically the same to me. Slightly different damage, slightly different muzzle velocity. So I suppose they are slightly different, but it's not really going to make too much of a difference. The APCR obviously gives you additional pen, which is nice, but probably won't do a ton of damage. But this is another one of those vehicles which will fit in, you know, pretty decent lineups, and also give you a little bit of a boost at the start of the game, and give you access to you know, scouting mechanics, which will be quite nice for the start of the German tech tree. The other one is the Racketon Automat. So this is, or has the possibility of just being a destroyer of worlds. You've taken the Ush turret, which is on the Swedish vehicle, and plonked it on a chassis which is very similar to the Racketon Jagdpanzers. It is slightly different. It's basically the older version of it, or the one which came before it, the HS series, which has a very interesting story, actually. Definitely worth having a look at. When, you know, if you're interested in political history, I suppose, on how this came about, and also the engineering issues that it had. So one of the big differences between this and the Ush is, even though it has the same, you know, kind of turret on it, this one has access to 29 rounds of ammunition. So it does actually have some reloads, which are pretty nice. This should be full of ammo, but isn't. So you can, you know, dispense of the rockets and then also have a little bit more. It also has a 3-man crew, the gunner in the top, and then the 2 drivers, or the driver and commander, sorry. And it also has access to the HE rockets and also the heat. And I'm sure many people will just use the heat because its anti-tank capabilities are what matter. So yeah, it's a fun vehicle. It'll be pretty mobile. Doesn't have a hugely powerful engine at 220 horsepower, but isn't crazy heavy either, so should be able to motor a little bit. Does have a pretty good transmission, so it'll be able to reverse in a decent way. And as long as you can hide this hole, this thing should do a ton of damage, especially since those rockets lost their traces a while ago and are very, very powerful. The next one is for the USSR, and it is the BTR-80A. Now, I know a lot of people have been waiting for the BTRs, same for me. I would like the prototype one eventually with the 85mm, but the 80A is much more of a standard one and has access to the 30mm 2A72. Now, this thing's at 5.7 at the moment, which I'm sure will make a lot of people worried, and I think that's fair. Usually these vehicles come in and they're under BR'd, and then they go up. The Puma, for an example, the Type 87 RCV, for an example. I feel like this vehicle is going to be pretty similar. Doesn't have great gun depression on the gun, but does have pretty much everything else. The targeting speed is very good. The rate of fire is very good. It doesn't overheat quickly. It doesn't have access to a stabilizer though, which is a bit of a problem, but it is quite a stabilized, unstable gun, if that makes sense. Like I can kind of show you what I mean by it. It also has access to an AP belt, so, you know, 4 APs, 1 HE, and pens up to 65mm. So it doesn't get access to APDS or APFSDS or anything like that, but yeah. You can also see here, they added some new voice lines. There's a bunch of new voice lines for a ton of different countries. What I'll do is I'll do a separate video talking about them and also looking into them, which will be fun. The optics doesn't work right now, so this is all the optics you get. You don't actually get a zoom on it. And then this is the gun, right? So yeah. You can see how it's pretty stable even though when you're moving. So you can still like pop targets as you move around. And the actual reload of it is pretty quick, so you can just keep firing over and over and over again, which will be quite nice. So, yeah. The vehicle will be able to decimate like lighter vehicles, but struggle against stuff like heavies, so we'll see what goes on. But yeah, it doesn't have access to APFSDS, doesn't have access to anything like that, but still should be pretty strong with a decent fire rate. Let's just fix the good old lighting as always. But yeah, chunky vehicle. I'm sure a lot of people enjoy it. Good mobility and also pretty fun gun as well. The Object 435 also comes in, one of those interesting kind of late 50s, early 60s prototypes for the USSR. It is basically the platform to test the 150mm, the U5 TS. This is the same gun that you find on the T62 And because it's the same gun you find on the T62, you have exactly the same rounds as on the T62. And as a person who's used this gun a lot, I really enjoy it. It does have sometimes a bit of an issue with damage, but overall not too bad. What is interesting about this vehicle is it actually has a default APF SDS, an upgraded APF SDS, and also a rank 4 Heat FS shell, which is very odd for a vehicle of this caliber. But you'll understand why once you start playing it. The other differences between this and something like the T62, you can see the hull is completely different, much similar wheel setup to the T64, and also has this weird front which gives it some additional armor. So it has variable thickness on it, it goes up to about 230mm, and also the turret is also fully variably thick and can go up to over 300 in many places. This thing will be surprisingly tanky for a lot of people, and also has access to the KPVT on the top, which will be nice. The gun has the 2-plane stabilizer and okay targeting speed for 8.3. It also has the 4-man crew with the loader just chilling. He's not allowed a chair. Very sad. His legs are going to be killing him. But yeah, you have the driver in the front. You obviously have all of the ammo in this fuel tank and all over the place for the vehicle. Very similar to a lot of other Soviet vehicles when they're pretty small in stature, so therefore they have to just pack everything in. No difference here for the Object 435. So this vehicle is looking pretty good. I'll enjoy this quite a lot. And also at the same time, it's after the T10M and before the T64A, so that's where it sits in the tech tree. For Britain, there is a South African vehicle, the Sark Mark 4A. This will actually start the South African subtech tree for the British, and also they did add South African voices, just to let you know. So they're not just doing the major nations for the voices, they're also doing some of the minor ones. The Sark Mark 4A is a truck with a 2-pounder on it. This is probably the best way of putting it. Does have some gun depression, is open-topped as well, so overpressure will love this thing, and also has access to a 7.62mm on it too. You can see how cramped these guys are in here with the 3-man crew. The general survivability is pretty much 0 on this thing, but you don't play vehicles like this for its survivability, you play it for its flanking speed with the 95 horsepower engine, and also the general just fun factor of running around and donking people with the gun. So yeah, it should be quite fun. Nothing that's world beating or anything like that, but just enjoyable at the end of the day. Also has a smoke that fires backwards for some reason. So you can see here one goes forwards, one goes backwards, covering the whole vehicle. And with the 2-pounder, you get all the 2-pounder rounds. The APC-BC, APHV, and of course the newer APHE for the vehicle too. So pretty fun. Should be a nice one. For Japan, you get the Type 87 RCVP. So this one, this Type 87, is a pretty interesting one because it's exactly the same as the Type 87, the RCV, which is here, which went up in BR a million times. But the difference between this one and also the P, which is, I suppose, the prototype one probably, this vehicle has access to the 20mm Rheinmetall 202 instead of the 25mm Oerlikon. So that's the real only difference between them that's going to make any difference. And that's how drastically the BR is different. This 20mm has access to DM43 with the HVAP, Pens 57, 42, 13, but still, not great penetration. This thing's mainly going to be used as a scout vehicle. You can see with the improved optics, and of course the airstrike, it will have scouting alongside the artillery and other things. Does also have the complement of grenades, which is nice to keep it alive, and the mobility on this thing is insane. With the 15-ton mass having a 305 horsepower engine, this can just run around like crazy, which is why the other one kept going up in BR over and over again. Pretty nice vehicle, super fun to play, so looking forward to seeing how this one fits in those lineups. For China, you have starting the ZTZ-88B. Now, I should actually kind of talk about this with looking at the other ZTZ, the 88A, which actually comes after it, just to kind of show you a comparison. So this is the 88A and this is the 88B. So what is the difference between these few vehicles, you ask? The difference between them is one gun is slightly longer than the other. That's it. So the reason why stuff like the rotation speed is different and the reload is because of my crew skills. But this has a slightly shorter barrel than this one. This one has the 105mm ZPL-94, but this has the 88B 105T. And that means that even though it both fire the Type 83 APDS 337-284-195 on the B, and then the Type 83 on this one is 351-296-203. So literally the difference between these things is just how long the barrel is. Also, this one doesn't get HEVT, but on the dev stream it did get HEVT, which seems a little bit odd. So maybe that's a difference they're bringing in. But it would be nice to see this get HEVT since they're basically the same vehicle. So yeah, simple as that for them. Then you got another box which doesn't have a lot going for it. This is the Object 211. It's a earlier version of the ZTS-63. I believe it's a prototype version of it. One of the key things to note about this is they're bringing this in, but they're also removing the PT-76. So if you have a look at the changelog, they're going to remove the Chinese PT-76 a few weeks after the update comes out. So I don't know why they're doing this, but they are. And that means that you have a limited time to be able to research this vehicle. So if you're not doing anything else and you want a unique vehicle which is going to be removed, make sure to get this Chinese PT-76 because it's not going to be here for too long. I don't know why they're removing it. I disagree with them removing it, but that's what they're doing, and I don't know why. So the Object 211, they take all the things from the ZTS-63 which make it a little bit fun, and just straight up remove them. So this vehicle doesn't have the heat, it only has the APC-BC, it doesn't have the Dishka on the top, and also it doesn't have anything else. So you're just a box with the 85mm with the AP on it, which absolutely sucks. Don't be fooled by this machine as well. So one of the things that you may see in videos going forward is the good old Chinese guys. If you have a look in the bottom left, it says stab on the vehicle, right? This gun does not have a stabilizer, as you can see, right? So there's no stabilizer on this gun. But the place where this thing does have a stabilizer is the commander optic. So that's why it says it has a stabilizer. So don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by that when looking at this vehicle. Just to kind of let you know what's going on. So yeah, no stabilizer, standard 85, no heat FS, very rough time is probably the way to put it. For the Italians, you have the Freja. So the Freja is a pretty cool vehicle. It's very similar to the VBC PT2, which we have in the game already, but they've added more stuff onto it. It's also at the end of the line for rank 7, the light tanks in this line for Italy. If you haven't, by the way, played the VCC 8030 or the Dardo or the VCC 8060, highly recommend them. Same with the VBC PT2 and the Centauros. Italy just has some fantastic light vehicles at higher tiers, super enjoyable. The Freja is coming in with the 25mm Olicon, which means it gets access to the APE FSDS, the PMB 090, which doesn't have a ton of pen, but has enough at the end of the day. It also gets access to thermals, which is super nice, but the crowning thing of this vehicle is the spikes. So this is the first vehicle in ground which has access to spike missiles. And if you remember spikes are those missiles which everybody's very afraid of, because they're fire and forget missiles, and also they have a ton of really nice stats to them, with the tandem charge, and also a bunch of other things coming for them. So The mechanic...
Preparatevi!
Rista pronto.
I'll just leave the Italians to do their thing. There you go. There's one guy stuck down a cave there.
Missione notturna attivata.
So the way that the spikes work is exactly the same as the QM506. So you lock onto a target, and then you fire them, and then it's fire and forget, they move in, and then hit the targets, right? So you can see there, that's exactly what happened. Didn't do a lot of damage, but c'est la vie. You kind of get the idea. These, though, you can actually fire on the move at any speed. So that's different to the QM506, and that is what's going to make these things pretty powerful. At the same time, if you want to like quickly annihilate a few targets, you can do this, then fire 2 at once, and then that will hit both targets as you go in. So the spikes are looking pretty juicy. A lot of interesting things for them. Bringing them in for the Italians should be pretty nice. And yeah, you have the backup 25mm, and of course the mobility of the Freja as well, which will be quite fun. So a lot of cool stuff to look forward to for that vehicle. For France, you have the AUF-1. Now the AUF-1 is well, it's a platform, as you can see. It's quite a big, chunky boy. It's another in the long line of SPHs that they've added to the game. It's one of those which I wish the lights would turn on. It's another one of those 155mm donkey machines, which, you know, a lot of nations use nowadays in modern combat. It's based on the AMX-30 chassis, which is, you know, the one that you can see here. So it's pretty mobile, got a good engine at 720 horsepower, and also has the 155mm GCTF1. What is also nice is they actually put a 50 cal on it, and I know that may not seem like a lot, but since these vehicles are pretty much prey to CAS, it gives you at least something to be able to fight back with. The armor on this vehicle is 20mm, nothing to write home about, and unfortunately quite sad. But at the same time, you have the standard AMX-30 chassis, which can be quite survivable because of the fuel tank in the front. Does have some crew, 4 members, and of course this huge ammo rack at the back. But remember, it is 2-stage ammunition, so if you shoot half of it, it shouldn't really do too much. If you shoot the other half, though, the charges, well, this thing will go up like a balloon. So there's 42 pieces of ammunition in this thing. And also the reload is 7.5, which is not bad. I've seen worse. You can see here it's also auto-loaded, so you don't have to worry about reload on your crew skills. And generally it should be alright in that. It also gets access to not just HE and smoke, it also gets access to the HEVT, which is what made the Rhino pretty strong when it came out, because it gave it the multi-role ability, and also the ability to, you know, donk targets above them and then shoot down, kind of like a TOW-2B general setup. So not too bad. Also has smoke grenades and many different things. Not great gun depression, but at the same time, this is one of those vehicles that you're going to have to hide in places and just donk people from afar, and I'm sure many people will enjoy that quite a lot. For Sweden, you have 2 vehicles, starting off with the CV90-30 Finn. This is a CV90, which has access to the 30mm Bushmaster 2, so everything else is pretty much the same. It has access to the APFSDS, the MK258, which is quite good on the vehicle, and also has the quite nice thermals, the scouting, and all of those. What is kind of odd about it is it's actually in the left-hand tree, though, instead of the right-hand tree. So even though it's Finnish, they've stuck it with the other light vehicles, and instead of putting it over here with the Finnish vehicles, they do have actually unique voice lines, though. So you have Swedish voice lines, where there's actually a female voice line for the tanks, which is pretty cool. And then also you have the Finnish voice lines, which are around as well. So good stabilizer, good mobility, good scout, all of that stuff. If you played any of the STRFs, you know how powerful vehicles like this can be, and this is definitely going to be good. The next one is the Sherman 3-4. which is an oddity for Sweden. It now completes the Holy Trinity, though. Now every nation once again has a good old Sherman in it. This is a premium one, which is coming in at rank 3 for the Swedish, so you can use it for dailies and specials, and it's going to be at 3.7 alongside the T-34 and the Panzer IV. So you can actually run a Sherman, T-34 and Panzer IV lineup, which is super fun and enjoyable. It doesn't have a top 50 cal. It's an amalgamation of 2 different Shermans, and also it doesn't have the machine gun port, which is kind of odd and looks really weird on the vehicle. It does have the stabilizer on the gun, does get access to the M61 shot, so all the nice stuff that you would like, and also gets access to a pretty killer lineup in the Swedish tech tree as well. The last ground vehicle is for Israel, and it is the Magak Hydra. This is just a standard Magak 6R, and they've attached rockets to it. Now, you may have been sat there and thinking, you know what? There's not enough Magaks. It's now time to get more Magaks, and you would be in the right. It's Hydra time. So this is just a standard Magak, which has just access to some really, really weird Hydra 70s. The M247s have decent pen, you know, they're heat rockets at the end of the day, and also the M111 round at rank 3, which will be nice. But the major issue with this thing is it loses its ARA for these rockets, and aiming the rockets is not entirely easy to do because of the simple fact that they don't line up with the gun. So here's where the gun goes, right? And this is where the rockets go. So yeah, you got a Zarinyi situation, I think is the way to put it, and it's going to be pretty hard to use them unless you use the gun and then you use them for like kind of backup to attack other things. So that is the Magak, and that is all of the ground vehicles that are on the dev server together as well. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Millie Draper, Juan the Panda, Nick R. Kupila, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie B. Young, Peter Grayling, Jerry Provolt, Bareen, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, Derek R., and Lafouche for supporting the channel.